So, after another week of Premier League football, Arsenal are edging closer to their first title since 2004. But although they win on Wednesday against Brighton, the negative press and the negative outcry from literally all quarters against Arsenal, and justified, it will not die down. This Arsenal team is odds on to win the title, and yet they'll probably be one of the most unpopular champions, probably since Leeds United in the late 60s and early 70s. The style and the way Arsenal are going about it's effective. That's the nicest thing I can say. I watched the majority of the Brighton game on Wednesday night, and Arsenal did their job. They went out, they got 3 points, that was it. I watched the game on Sunday against Chelsea. They went out, they got their job done, they got the 3 points, that was it. In contrast, I watched Bayern Munich and Dortmund playing the Klassiker on Saturday night, and I watched Roma Juventus on the Sunday evening. Both of those were free-flowing games, brilliant. Arsenal Chelsea and Arsenal Brighton were so poor for a team top of the league, especially in the Arsenal Chelsea game. And while everyone batters Arsenal in that game, I think Chelsea should also be battered as well, because to me they didn't really start playing until they had 10 men. But I also want to draw people's attention to the Leeds United Sunderland game on the Tuesday night, because I watched the majority of that. And if anything, that was worse. I think it was summed up the way Sunderland played that game, when in the second half Leeds were on the attack and the second ball had come on the pitch. So Leeds are coming down the right towards the right-hand side, and the second ball's on the left-hand side. Now, Luke O'Nien of Sunderland has three options. He can either leave the ball, kick the ball out of touch to the nearest side, or a third option, which is what he did, is he kicked the ball towards the ball in play that Leeds had. Now, it was blocked. Now, brilliant refereeing here, because the referee had seen it out the corner of his eye and he booked Luke O'Nien. And I don't care if whatever Luke O'Nien was saying to the ref, because he clearly was like, oh, ref, it wasn't me, or whatever he was saying. But it was clearly deliberate to try and break up another Leeds attack. So Arsenal aren't the only ones playing like this. Sunderland, were doing it at Leeds. Now, the only difference I see here is Sunderland are not far superior to Leeds. Sunderland did what they did because Ellen Road is currently a hard place to go. Man City found that out, the previous game where they only won 1-0. And Sunderland came to, get a draw, or at least a draw. And obviously they came away with a win. The frustration with Arsenal is they have the quality attacking players. So it's not like they're devoid of any flair or any decent players up front. And yes, Arsenal should be playing better. They should be scoring more goals from open play, not relying on the set pieces. But even then again, the set pieces, it's not just Arsenal. We saw a couple of weeks ago the Everton United game. We're seeing it in a lot of games, and it's not just this season. I mean, when at the top level did defending at a corner become all about holding your man and forgetting about the ball pretty much? Because there are plenty of incidences. Obviously, there was one in the Arsenal-Chelsea game where Rice is grappling with one of the Chelsea players. He's got his back to the corner. He's not even looking at the ball. So Arsenal are guilty of it, but so are plenty of other clubs. And I'm starting to have a begrudging respect for Arsenal, because they've been close in the last few seasons, and they've opened it up, and they've come short in a number of seasons. I mean, I remember as far back as the 07-08 season when they went to Birmingham and they drew 2-2. They threw it away. It was the game where Eduardo had his horrible injury. But one of the things that sticks out in that game is I think Birmingham scored a very, very late penalty. And William Gallas, the captain of Arsenal, has stormed to the halfway line and he's sulking, because he can't believe what's happened. And throughout the 2010s and into the early 2020s, like watching Soccer Saturday, they always talked about Arsenal's soft centre. They didn't have a Tony Adams, a Martin Keown, a Steve Bold. They would win some games brilliantly, playing lovely football, but when it came to it, they didn't have the steel of the old Arsenal teams, even the teams under Wenger, with Patrick Vieira. And so, for years, Arsenal were crying out for, a bit of, not rough play, but a bit more steel to go with the silk that they offered. Now, unfortunately, they have gone, too far the other way. But look, at the end of the day, not every team winning a competition can win it with free-flowing football, scoring 100 goals and getting 98 points. We've been spoilt a bit in the Premier League in the last 5 or 10 years with, Manchester City and Liverpool getting 97 and 99 points and 100, etc. So Arsenal will never go down, assuming they win the title this season, of course, as the most popular champions. But if I was Arsenal, I just wouldn't care. If this delivers us the title after so many near misses, it doesn't matter. Now, my expectation for Arsenal then would be, once they've got over this thing of not winning the title and then winning it this season, I would expect the players with more confidence then to go into next season and play a bit more football. That would be the hope. Obviously, we wait and see. Arsenal haven't even won the league yet. Now, the problem with the Arsenal winning the league this season, if they do, is they'll be compared to the Wenger teams of 98, 2002 and 2004. And, they're not going to win, any popularity contests against those three Arsenal teams. But people seem to forget that under Wenger, in the late 90s, Arsenal had a terrible disciplinary record. Patrick Vieira was one of the main culprits. So while they did win the double in 98, and obviously they came close in 99 to pipping United. It was only a draw with Leeds, defeat to Leeds, that in the 37th game that gave United the initiative going into the final game. But Arsenal became, their disciplinary record was poor, but that is forgotten in the midst of time. Now, one thing I always hold against the Arsenal teams of Arsene Wenger is they could never defend a title. It's my view that good teams win a title, great teams retain a title, and the best win 3 in a row, or more. So Huddersfield and Arsenal in pre-Second World War. Now, obviously, Herbert Chapman, one of the best managers, obviously had a massive influence on both of those. Liverpool have done it. Obviously, Manchester United have done it, and City have done it. But Arsenal under Wenger could, never retain the title. And I wouldn't want to see Arsenal win back-to-back titles playing this style of football. But there seems to be a bit more about this Arsenal team. So I'm going to give them a begrudging respect here, because I think if they carry this through and win the title, then I don't think Arsenal fans will really care. And probably in about 20 or 30 years' time, some of this will be forgotten. I don't think this Arsenal team will be as hated and remembered as the Leeds United team, dirty Leeds, from the late 60s into the 70s, Don Revie's Leeds. But it's not nice for the Premier League, But I also want to kind of give it another example of where a team has won a competition, but they're not held in the highest esteem, and that was Brazil of 1994. So, Brazil had won, the most iconic Brazilian World Cup win is the 1970 tournament. The first to be truly in colour with, Pelé and Carlos Alberto, and that wonderful final. And then the Brazil of 2002 as well, from kind of more modern audiences, with Ronaldo, Rivaldo, Ronaldinho, Roberto Carlos and the like. And even the 1982 Brazil side that didn't win the tournament, again, they are fondly remembered for their attacking style. But the Brazil of 1994 is not held in the same esteem. And yet here's a team who won the World Cup. And that's because in Brazil, that team is seen as a functional team, based on more of a European model. So while you had Romario and Bebeto, people look at Carlos Dunga in the midfield, the captain, and a number of other players, and it was more of a functional team. So, but at the end of the day, it's a World Cup for Brazil. I would give anything for the team I support to be playing like Arsenal at the moment and getting results, whether it's a point or 3 points. So, I'm going to give it, as I say, a begrudging respect to Arsenal for this season, assuming they go on and win it. And they really should. They've got 8 games left. Man City have got 9, but they're 7 points clear. Yes, they've got to play Manchester City. I think the key kind of key week for Arsenal for me is they play Bournemouth at home and Manchester City away. And that's, to me, that's the kind of 2 games that I look at and think, right, the Arsenal of the last few seasons are going to struggle in that Bournemouth game and will most likely lose to City. Now, I'm not saying this Arsenal is going to do the same, but that's the kind of the 2 games I look at. And also, they've got a relatively easy Champions League draw through to the semi-final. So you've got Leverkusen in the last 16, and then Sporting or Bodo Glimt, if they get past Leverkusen, which they should do. So where is their mind going to be at in terms of, because this is probably their best chance of winning the Champions League. Because in the semi-final, assuming they get there, it's either Barcelona, Newcastle, Tottenham, or Atletico Madrid. And I think they're capable of winning against any of those 4 teams. Barcelona, of course, would be probably the biggest problem. So, yeah. And then obviously they've also got the League Cup final, and obviously that's going to play a part into their mentality because, of course, obviously it's against Man City, so whoever wins that, does that give them an edge? I mean, City have been to plenty of League Cup finals and won in recent years. The City squad is that, as I say, they're not just League Cup but FA Cup. They've won Premier Leagues as well. The Arsenal players, obviously, they haven't got. Well, a lot of them haven't got that winning mentality yet. They haven't won trophies yet. So, at least with Arsenal, obviously Declan Rice and a number of others have won trophies elsewhere. So, it's not a foregone conclusion that Arsenal will now go and win the league, but I think they probably will with the way they're playing. And they'll get battered for the rest of the season, how they are playing in the Premier League. But I don't think Arsenal fans really care. And, if I was an Arsenal fan, I would just point to Liverpool, Chelsea, even United. I know United haven't been in the title race for a number of years. And I would just say, well, look at where they are. And, in some of the games, they are playing better football than us. So, yeah. Arsenal will not be the best champions. They will not go down as, even Arsenal's best Premier League champions, far from it. But I give them a begrudging respect for sticking with it in the face of absolute battering from pretty much the entire football world at the moment. And, this could end up as a brilliant season for Arsenal, winning the league, potential Champions League and League Cup, and they're still in the FA Cup. It could end with nothing, or it could end with something. But I think for Arsenal, the psychology, I think they've got to win the Premier League title. They've got to, after the last few seasons. And I think they are going about it in a way that is not drawing praise, but it is effective. Because I had Arsenal to lose that game at Brighton on Wednesday, because I felt that that's the kind of games. It's not the games against your Chelseas and teams like that. It's your games when you are expected to win. So down at Brighton, and I thought they would slip up. I didn't think they'd lose necessarily, but I didn't think they'd win. But they did. They did what they did, and they could have won that game 6-0 if they played to their level. or 1-0, but it doesn't matter. It's 3 points. You don't get extra bonus points for winning 6 or 7-0. So yeah. So a begrudging respect for Arsenal. And just for a change, I would like to see them win the league, because it does get a little bit boring with Manchester City or Liverpool. You know, it would be good to see somebody else win the league, even if this is not exactly the way to go about it. But we'll see at the end of the season. It could all blow up in their faces once again.